Thank you, Dr. Murthy, Krishna. Once again, it's a privilege and pleasure to be here today. What I will speak on today is an area where we've been interested in for some time, but it's sort of restricting this talk to a sort of an Indian flavor. I'm sure Trendo will grow into as the Emperor Society of India is affiliated with the larger South Asian region. This talk will try and give you a little South Asian perspective and not just an Indian perspective on a problem which we've started recognizing a bit more today with more available investigations. Right. So let me start with the confusion. Most nutrient intake recommendations and national nutrition policies have really depended on understanding short latency disorders. So if you had vitamin C deficiency, you got scurvy. If you have vitamin A deficiency, you develop night blindness. And there was a very short span between the criticality of the deficiency and the manifestation of the clinical disease. And therefore, the assumption was always that a nutrient deficiency had a short latency effect in causing a clinical problem. And the assumption therefore was that if a nutrient ingestion can prevent the index disease being scurvy for vitamin C, night blindness for vitamin A, or rickets osteomalacia for vitamin D, that quantum is adequate for the functioning of the organism, right? There are two problems with that assumption. One, there could be long-term implications of the same deficiency, a subclinical or a less severe deficiency, not manifesting immediately, but manifesting in the long term. Or there could be different metabolic mechanisms for other diseases linked to nutrient deficiency. And both of these become very relevant when we talk about vitamin D deficiency. And it was in 1990, about 25 years ago, when Dr. Michael Parfit essentially came up with the concept of hypovitaminosis D osteopathy, saying that you need not only have rickets osteomalacia as a skeletal manifestation of vitamin D deficiency, you could actually have long-term poor bone mass and poor bone density also as manifestations of a milder subclinical form of vitamin D deficiency. The next thing which has confused us and continues to confuse us even today is how do you define vitamin D deficiency? I mean, one would have thought that we would have figured this one out by now, but most people will believe that vitamin D deficiency is when your serum 25-hydroxy-D levels are less than 20 nanograms per mil, or in the SI units less than 50 nanomoles per liter. Right? And there's an entity called vitamin D insufficiency, which is something between 20 and 30. But that's what we believe today, and that belief seems to have been a fairly dynamic belief. We keep changing in our belief over a period of time. And most of these cutoffs have been based predominantly on evaluating the relationship between 25-hydroxy-D and PTH. Instead of seeing at below what level of 25-hydroxy-D do serum PTH levels start to rise. But I think it's important for us to understand very carefully that vitamin D is a very difficult analyte. With a plethora of assays and a profusion of labs doing them for clinical service, I think the problem has become even more significant. Now, presently it is believed that using a mass spec is perhaps the best way of measuring 25D. Most service labs don't do that. The graph here tries to show you the relationship between gold standard mass spec measured concentrations of 25D and concentrations measured by standard, well-established assays, which all of us use in our clinical service lab on a regular basis. And as you can see very, very clearly, it's a miserable correlation. Right? And this is a formal study done and published a few years ago in JBMR. And I think the most apt statement was in an editorial in Clinical Chemistry a couple of years ago, which said that the history of 25-hydroxy-D methodology could serve as a case study of the consequences of hastily, and I add the word hastily there, transferring a rigorous but labor-intensive method from the unhurried atmosphere of the research laboratory to the bustle of a routine clinical laboratory, trying and having to meet tight deadlines. And I think therefore we must be very, very careful when we order these tests, and we must be equally careful when we try and interpret these tests. One thing I'd like to say is that all reasonable labs which do vitamin Ds participate in external quality assurance programs. The one which is most commonly used is called DQuest, and I would urge you to check the lab where you send your samples to ensure that they are doing external quality assurance, so that at least the results that you get are more reliable than you would think otherwise. The other thing which remains a matter of some debate and discussion is when you're trying to decide on therapy, what are your target levels, right? And this discussion between 20 nanograms per ml versus 30 nanograms per ml continues for a long time. It's perhaps not very critical in a country like India, where it's a struggle to get people even to 20 nanograms per ml. But I think the data that we have is that fracture risk reduction and prevention of falls and injury, the target appears to be 30 nanograms per ml, right? And I use the word appears advisedly because data keeps appearing. For the non-skeletal effects, I mean, that's the story which is so much up in the air that I wouldn't really even try and talk about it in terms of what we need to know clinically. I think there's been an unnecessary pressure by a range of agencies and industry to try and convince everybody that, just like it was said about probiotics, vitamin D is the panacea for every disease in front of us. That is clearly not the case. The evidence is very, very trivial, and the evidence is clearly not enough for us to consider this as considered clinical practice. Right. The vitamin D guidelines from the Endocrine Society of India are also one of the activities which we've planned during the course of the year. Hopefully, in the next 6 to 8 weeks, these guidelines will be out, and we are trying to put an Indian perspective on this with the data available. So for the rest of my talk, I'll try and split this into largely epidemiological data from various ages and gender categories to try and give you a distillation of data from across the South Asian region. The story actually really started in migrant South Asians. Like a lot of stories started with diabetes, for heart disease, even the stories for vitamin D started with migrant South Asians. And if you look at this slide, and I won't bother reading it, but essentially 15 to 30% of people showed clinical evidence of rickets. This is migrant South Asians who went to the UK in the 1960s and 70s, predominantly blue-collar workers who were making up the shortfall of the labor, of the industrial labor workforce, which happened as a result of the Second War. And if you look at biochemical measurements of 25D in those days, and the assays are very different from what we use today, 50 to 70% of them had biochemical vitamin D deficiency. Over a period of time, the studies from the late 80s to early 90s showed a little decline in these early observations. Rudolf Virchow, whom we all know very well, said medicine is a social science and politics is nothing else but medicine on a large scale. Right? And I think if you go back to see how the British establishment handled the story of Asian rickets, you'll understand the context in which I made the previous statement. Now this was an observation which is correct. The observation was nutritional rickets in Australasia are diseases of the impoverished city dwellers. And these affected immigrants were almost exclusively from the new Commonwealth. That is, from India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. And that was an absolutely correct observation. The next became a hypothetical, speculative. That there's a hypothetical possibility that a dusky skin requires more ultraviolet radiation than a white skin, which is a reasonable assumption to make. But the therapeutic inference drawn from this observation was a bit bizarre, and that was the solution lies in adequate education of Asian women immigrants, first to speak English, which obviously is the most logical way of treating vitamin D deficiency. And secondly, to teach them the elements of child care in this climate. You're just not good enough to look after your own children. You can't speak to them in English, and you're doing all the wrong things. This is a government paper from the UK addressing how to tackle the South Asian rickets problem. Right? So essentially the same networks that imperialized culture, because the establishment of the Royal Medical Corps in India was not to treat the Indians, but to treat the colonials who had problems when they came out here. The same mindset went on there, and a good 15 years was wasted trying to figure this problem out, during which time I can show you they learned a reasonable amount of English, and they did manage to acculturate to some extent. Is this even more complex? Because two studies actually showed that the cousins of the Punjabi migrants back in India did not seem to have the same degree of vitamin D deficiency. So they were fine if they spoke Punjabi in Punjab and did their usual cultural practices there. But it didn't work when you crossed the 7 seas. You needed a 7 seas cordial oil for that. And Asians living in Pakistan also seem to have better concentration. These two papers actually distracted from studying vitamin D in the South Asian native context back in the country itself. Now if you compare UK South Asian with whites, the data actually persists even today. And the annual measurement of South Asian versus whites show that very clearly South Asians, whether it's in summer or in winter, have far lower values of vitamin D out there than the white population of those countries. This was possibly because of the lower dietary vitamin D, lower personal ultraviolet exposure, despite similar outdoor time. So it's not being outdoors which is enough, you've got to actually show some skin when you're outdoors for it to be enough. Lower skin surface exposure and lower supplement use. And they've actually done simulation studies in which they've exposed South Asians and whites to ultraviolet rays which are equivalent to what you would get if you were in the summer sun. And what this clearly shows, with that ultraviolet exposure, there is a huge difference between what happens to 25 D levels in South Asians and what happens to vitamin D levels in the white populations there. Now, this is not a British problem. So it's a problem which is seen in other migrants also. So this is a story of Pakistani migrants in Scandinavia. Again, 40 to 50% of them having levels clearly consistent with vitamin D deficiency. It's not a Pakistani problem because it's the same with Sri Lankans. The Sri Lankans going to Scandinavia and the Sri Lankans in Britain actually have the same problem. Maybe to a slightly lesser extent, but very, very clearly you can see from their median values that this was happening. So the migrant studies should have actually rung a bell, like they did for diabetes, like they did for heart disease, that what's happening to this population when they migrate is possibly a precursor of what is going to happen to the same population when they stay back in their own countries. So now I'm going to present you a set of data from us, from South Asia, starting with studies in school age children. This is one of our studies which was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition about 10 years ago. Essentially, we looked at a bunch of school kids, mainly from government schools and private schools, and except for this one aberration, and I think we must have got something wrong, you can see that the mean 25Ds are about 10 nanograms per ml, 10 or 11, whatever you want to say, and there were minor differences between the lower and the upper socioeconomic class, but I think subsequent studies don't seem to show that as consistently. Nearly 90% of the children, see, listen, kids still go outdoors, still wear shorts and skirts. These children, 90% of them had values less than 20 nanograms per ml, and there was obviously a significant negative correlation with their PTH levels. What about younger? So studies in neonates, infants, and pregnant women. This is one of the first studies in pregnant women, which was done by Dr. Vijayalakshmi Bhatia in Lucknow and her group in Lucknow. Again, showing maternal 25-hydroxy is about 14 nanograms, cord blood even lesser, right? Again, a very strong correlation between maternal and cord blood for obvious reasons, and then a moderate negative correlation with maternal PTH. Clearly, a significant proportion of these women biochemical secondary hyperparathyroidism. This is again not an Indian problem, study from Pakistan. 90% of women had values less than 30, and as expected, a strong correlation between maternal and cord blood levels. We then went on to do the study which was published in the British Journal of Nutrition about 4 years ago. We looked at women across all trimesters in summer and winter. So these are not the same women. There are multiple cross-sectional data from different women, but the story is pretty clear whether it's summer or winter, whether it's first trimester, second trimester, or third trimester, the mean values remain 9 to 10 nanograms, which is less than what was reported by individual. And the PTH values are either towards the upper limit of normal in the summers or actually creep into the abnormally high values when you're looking at winter. So clear data, 2 studies from India, a study from Pakistan. We then went on to look at exclusively breastfed infants. Maternal 25 days, and this time we looked at a lower cutoff. Nearly 50% of the women had values less than 10 nanograms per ml. And if you took their babies, they were much, much more likely to have values less than 10 nanograms per ml, as unlike babies of mothers who had slightly higher values. And again, the same mean value of 10 to 11 or 12 nanograms per ml. 60 to 70% of mothers actually had elevated PTH levels once their 25D dipped below 10. Same story from Nepal and the same story from Sri Lanka. The extent of the problem varies, the grade of the problem varies, but the problem remains very much the same. Right? Study from Pakistan, again in breastfed infants, similar story. Maternal values about 9, infant values about half. In this particular study, the data was even worse than what we reported in Delhi. And a second study, also from Pakistan, showing exactly the same thing, appallingly low levels of 25-hydroxy-D, because actually if you look at Obstetric Society guidelines, everybody talks of giving calcium and iron to the pregnant mother, but there is no clear policy on giving vitamin D to the mother during pregnancy. Is this a problem only in children and neonates? Well, look at the studies from adults. This is a whole range of studies, and I'm not going to take you through each one of them separately, but essentially this is data from our institution. Look at the values of physicians and nurses in winter. 3 nanograms per ml. That was a mean value, right? 7 nanograms per ml in summer. Obviously, we keep our residents busy and inside hospitals, but still, these are really, really low values. This is what we did to look at paramilitary forces, because we said these are the people who go out. These were the only unsupplemented North Indian population which we found had reasonable levels of 25-hydroxy-D. They were well nourished, they were physically active, and they spent extremely long hours in the sun. Right? 80% of hospital staff had low values. This is from Sanjay Gandhi. Again, all of these data showing extremely low adult 25-hydroxy-D levels. This study showed slightly better rural vitamin D status than urban. And actually, if you compare data from the south of India, it consistently shows better 25-hydroxy-D than studies reported from the northern part of the country. And that's an important point which I think needs looking into. Right. As I said, the rural data, better than urban data, but not very different. And rural female data doesn't improve as much because the extent of exposure to sunlight is there, but the amount of skin exposure for most women, at least in northern Indian villages, is not very significant. So the men benefit, the women do not. What about the elderly? And this is stuff which we did. This is not elderly, this is people who are 50 plus in residential colonies in Delhi. Mean levels, once again, under 10. 90% of them had values which were less than 20 nanograms per ml. The handful which had higher values were clearly on supplementation. Studies in adult Bangladeshis, very similar, low values. But the interesting part here was that there was no difference between veiled and non-veiled women. But veiling is just preventing 9% of surface area. The rest is in any case covered whether you're veiled or you're not veiled. So it really didn't make a huge difference in that population. So is this, and I think Thomas Paul will have a talk later in the afternoon which says, are we just chasing numbers? Which could be the case. But let me show you some data which suggests that there is more than just an abnormal 25-hydroxy-D value, and this is something we need to be concerned about. Is there a relationship between vitamin D and bone mineral density? And there seems to be a lot of confusion, and I'll try and take you through some of the studies which are done. One of the earlier studies, when Amrish Mittal was still in Sanjay Gandhi PGI, showed some correlation between femoral neck and 25-hydroxy-D levels, not consistently seen in other sites. Our own data again showed that there was very limited relationship between femoral neck or lumbar spine BMDs and 25-hydroxy-D levels. There was some relationship seen at the radius, but this was not consistent. This is looking at BMD versus osteopenia, osteoporosis categories and 25-hydroxy-D levels in our elderly population. You can see that as you go for somebody with a normal BMD, with normal 25-hydroxy-D level, to those who have got severe vitamin D deficiency, the prevalence of osteopenia and osteoporosis does tend to rise, but this is a trend and it really doesn't show a very dramatic difference. And there was actually, in this study, no correlation between BMD and 25D levels. In the study from Pakistan, vitamin D deficiency and insufficiency was not only seen in significant numbers, but there was a lot of secondary hyperpara, and they showed high bone turnover markers as a consequence possibly of the low vitamin D status. And the same story in Bangladesh. But what we tried to do was try and dissect this out a little more to see if it was just a vitamin D or only when you became secondary hyperparathyroid were you having an effect on your bone density. So we looked at two populations, about 2,000 adolescents and about 1,500 adults more than 50 years of age. We looked at their biochemistries, PTH, 25Ds and their bone density, and then we divided these people into quartiles based on their PTH. So the lowest PTH in quartile 1, the highest PTH in quartile 4. And essentially what we showed here was that as you went from the lowest PTH to the highest PTH, there was a progressive decline in BMD. This is not rocket science, we expected, but we showed it, and this was significant, and this was not only at the femoral neck, but also at the lumbar spine. What we then went on to do was, we tried to see whether change in 25-hydroxy-D within the same quartile of PTH has any additional effect on bone density. And as you can see clearly, that as long as you are within a range of PTH, it then didn't make a difference what your vitamin D levels were, your BMD was relatively stable, suggesting that vitamin D deficiency is possibly influencing bone mineral density by a PTH-mediated mechanism and not an independent mechanism. So unless you're getting an elevated PTH, the low vitamin D is not really affecting your bone density. And not everybody with low 25D has a high PTH. So that's a totally different story altogether. But very clearly, within the quartiles of PTH, irrespective of what your vitamin D levels were, your BMD was relatively stable. No significant difference at all. So how can we fix this, right? So we say biochemically there is a problem which occurs not only in those who migrated to Northern Europe and the UK. It happens in India. It happens not only in North India, but also in South India. May not be the same extent, but it does happen. It doesn't happen only in India. It happens in Pakistan, it happens in Bangladesh, it happens in Nepal, it happens in Sri Lanka. It possibly happens in the other South Asian countries, which just haven't bothered to measure it till now. We also see see that when it causes secondary hyperparathyroidism, for which there may be other contributing factors, including the low calcium in our diets, right, and other environmental factors, it does end up causing poor bone mass. Well, I should use the word causing because these are cross-sectional data, but it clearly seems to be associated with poor bone mass. And just because we're all not rachitic or osteomalacic, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and treat it. Now, there are several reports from the Endocrine Society of India, from the Endocrine Society, from the Institute of Medicine, from all sorts of different things. But I, in honor of our two visiting friends from North America, must quote what a former defense secretary of that country said. And in his wisdom, he made this statement, and I'll take you through this because this has relevance to vitamin D. He said, there are known knowns, so there are things that we know. There are known unknowns, that is to say, that there are things where we now know that we don't know. But perhaps more importantly, there are unknown unknowns. There are things we do not know that we do not know, right? And this was said by Donald Rumsfeld. I don't know what he was really trying to communicate there, but what I'm trying to communicate, I think treatment of vitamin D deficiency possibly is we don't know what we don't know. I don't think it's the first or second bullet point, and you can see the significant confusion in the intervention studies, which validates Mr. Rumfield's belief that there are unknown unknowns. Right. So let me just give you a little historical perspective, then you realize, as practicing clinicians, a lot of us feel that we are doing a very scientific job and that all our decisions are based on good, solid theory which has been scientifically proven. Before 1997, the recommended dietary allowance for infants and children was 400 international units. Fair enough. But the scientific reason for that was that this was approximately the amount of vitamin D which is present in 1 spoon of cod liver oil. And we all know that cod liver oil, 1 spoon a day, prevents rickets. Right? So that was the entire theory and science behind the decision for a recommended dietary allowance, that we know you give 1 spoon of cod liver oil and nobody gets rickets, so that has to be good enough. Remember, this is 7 years after Michael Parfit had already promulgated the long latency disease and the hypovitaminosis osteopathy. The adult RDA, if you thought this was wobbly, the adult RDA was even more arbitrary. Right? It was said, if children have growing bones, they need 1 spoon. Adults don't have growing bones, half should be good. Right? So 200 units is the right answer for that one. Right? Then the next one, which was based on science, we're great suckers for, what's the evidence base? The evidence base for the next recommendation was derived from 7 osteomalacic women. 7, right? And 100 units per day was given and their bones responded. So it came to 100 units per day, right? And then the National Academy of Sciences in 1989 said, well, an RDA of 200 is a very, very generous allowance. I mean, adults want some vitamin D, let's give it them. 200 is good for you. So we've got a bunch of studies done in our region on replacement and on supplementation. I'll take you through some of the data to give you a sense of what we are grappling with. This is work done by Ravindra Goswami from our department. Adults, what he did was he gave a gram of elemental calcium, 60,000 units of vitamin D every week for 8 weeks, right? And then did nothing after that. So you have baseline data, you have 8 weeks data, and then you have no intervention and a follow-up data at 1 year. What clearly indicates that virtually everybody became vitamin D replete during this 8 weeks of supplementation. Virtually everybody, 80 or 85% of people became replete, as opposed to 80 or 85% who were deficient. But, as expected, it came right back to where you started if you don't continue to give it. We did the other mistake. So we looked at school children and we said, we'll give two different regimens. We'll give them 60,000 units a month or 60,000 units every 2 months. So either the equivalent of 2,000 units a day or 1,000 units a day, we will not give them a loading dose and we will not give them calcium. Obviously, an error on our part. And essentially what happened after that was that, you gave them monthly vitamin D of 60,000, their values improved, but they didn't improve to the level that we wanted it to improve. Right? So the problem here was that at baseline, 90% of them were deficient, and after supplementation, depending on what group you were, 60 to 30% of them remained deficient. So the answer possibly was, you need to give a loading dose, and then you need to give a maintenance dose to keep people in the range. This is work done in pregnancy from Dr. Vijayalakshmi Bhatia's group. This was again, remember pregnancy is an area you don't like to try something extravagant. So Vijayalakshmi initially said, we'll give them 1 dose of vitamin D because the obstetricians don't recommend anything. 60,000 units, and then she quickly realized that it's not going to work. And then she gave 2 doses of 120,000 each. And here too, the levels became all right. There's some changes in anthropometry, but it didn't really make all that much of a difference. There are data from Pakistan in which they've given 600 units of calcium plus 4,000 units of vitamin D every day, and clearly that seemed to make a difference, a combination of calcium and vitamin D, but it made no difference on anthropometry. And this is another study from Pakistan, on Pakistani migrants. This was giving just 400 or 800 units per day and showing some impact out there. This and last study, I think, on this one is a supplementation study in Bangladeshi females, and this was 400 units or a range of other descriptions. As expected, vitamin D rose significantly, but it didn't make threshold values, and it made no difference really on most other parameters. So this is medicalizing vitamin D. Can we do it by supplementation? And this is work done by my friend and colleague Raman Marwa and several investigators working with him on this one. And essentially what he did was at that point to try and give milk fortified with vitamin D to school children. So these children were given 600 units per day and 200 ml of milk. This was pre-packed processed milk, or 1,000 units per day in the same amount. And what you can see was, and all of them were actually given a loading dose for some period of time. Right? But you can see the rise. The 600 units per day over a period of 6 months bumped it up to 22, which is pretty good, and 1,000 units per day bumped it up to 27. So, proof of principle that if you can deliver it in milk, you can. It does make a difference. The question is, how many of us take milk in cartons, and how many of the manufacturers would be happy to fortify that? So those are public health issues. This is a basic clinical question which was addressed, and I thought a pretty good answer came. So I'm going to stop here by essentially trying to say that this is a huge problem. Every specialist likes to come and say that the disease they're tackling is a huge problem, but this is a huge problem. If 90% of people have 25D values which are low, it's obviously a very important problem. It is seen in pregnant women, their breastfed infants, neonates, children, young adults, middle-aged adults, and elderly. So there is no population which is exempt from this problem. The skin exposure to sunlight, we have abundance of that, but the summer sun brings so much heat with it that it's really not practical to try and expose yourself to that skin. And the winter sun, at least in the north, which is 24, 25 degrees north, is too oblique, and in any case, you're so much more covered that you're not likely to get any benefit. The latitude makes a difference, the season and time of the day makes a difference. Cloud cover, and we keep hearing about atmospheric pollution now, clearly makes a difference. There's a study from St. Stephen's Hospital in Delhi in collaboration with Dr. Zulf in the UK, which clearly showed two different areas, different level of atmospheric pollution, very different levels of 25-hydroxy. The time spent outdoors, the sort of dress that we wear, and the sunscreen used, which I didn't think really happened till I started asking school children, and at least the private school children in Delhi use a lot of sunscreen. It's quite remarkable, and I didn't really understand that. And obviously our problems with skin pigmentation and age. So the problem is fairly significant, and it definitely has a significant impact on clinical illness, possibly does have an impact on osteoporosis prevalence, because it may really have a long latency. Now, unless you're willing to follow up a cohort untreated and naive for 30, 40 years, if you're not really answering the question accurately, the cross-sectional data does seem to suggest that, and a range of skeletal, and I should perhaps add the word musculoskeletal health, and I'm not showing you the muscle data at all. I think you need a critical appraisal for fortification. The endocrinologists have done their bit to try and identify the problem and show that supplementation can make a difference. It's time for the public health experts and policy experts to now come in and start looking at this in much more detail. I'm going to stop here by saying that, as Dr. Murthy said, lots of people do the work and one person has the opportunity to present data. This was work done by a really large number. I could actually have put some more names in, but we were running out of space. The team at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, a lot of faculty members, and several generations of senior residents and PhD students. Raman Marwa and his team from DRDO. We had huge inputs from the nutrition department from the University of Delhi at the Institute of Home Economics and Seema Puri and her team, and a whole bunch of pediatricians from Delhi Harvard Medical College. I'd like to stop here once again and thank you so much for the opportunity to come and see this bustling hall. People from Dr. Dash, Dr. Kannan, Dr. Murthy's vintage will remind us that the earlier endocrine society meetings, when they were part of the API, used to end up having maybe a tenth of this number addressing the national meeting. We are incredibly fortunate to see such brilliant participation, and I commend the organizers for that. Thank you so much.